The moment I saw a stranger with a toolbox standing next to my father on my own front porch, something inside me went very quiet. Not scared, not angry, cold. It was 11:14 on a Sunday morning in March, and I was watching them on my phone. 4 security camera feeds tiled neatly on my screen. Crisp 4K footage courtesy of the Arlo Pro system I'd installed myself 18 months ago. My father, Richard Pierce, was pointing at my front door lock like a contractor surveying a job site. The locksmith beside him was already unzipping his canvas bag, and my sister Madeline was standing on the porch steps in a cream-colored cashmere wrap, arms folded, watching with the patient expression of someone waiting for the valets to bring the car around. They had been in my house 45 minutes earlier, all 3 of them, my mother too. They had sat on my furniture, drank my coffee, and my father had looked me in the eye and told me that my house, with my name on the mortgage, my name on the deed, my credit score stretched across every inch of it, should going forward belong to Madeline. I had told them to get out. So they came back with a locksmith. My father built commercial properties for a living. He understood contracts. He understood deeds and liens and the difference between a gift and a loan. He knew exactly what he was doing on that porch. He was betting that I would panic, that I'd look at my father, a man I'd respected and feared my entire life, standing there with a hired professional and the implicit weight of family obligation, and I would fold. He had never, in 34 years, seen me play the long game. He was about to. Let me back up, because this story doesn't start on a Sunday in March. It starts 4 years earlier, on a boat. My name is Claire Pierce. I'm a litigation attorney, and I say that not to brag, but because it's contextually important. I understand paper trails, I understand documentation, and I understand what it means when someone moves to strip you of something that is legally yours. Those instincts aren't just professional. They're survival skills I learned growing up in the Pierce household, where my father's love came in the form of assets, and my sister learned very young that she was the primary beneficiary. I was the practical one, the one who got a full academic scholarship, put herself through law school, made partner at 32. I was the one my father pointed to at dinner parties as proof that he'd done something right, but never the one he worried about. Madeline was the one he worried about. He'd been worrying about Madeline since she was 17 and crashed his Porsche into a neighbor's fence and cried until he bought her a better one. Madeline is 31. She's beautiful in a way that has always worked like a weapon. Dark eyes, effortless posture, the kind of voice that makes men slow down mid-sentence. She floated through 2 years of art school, a brief engagement to a hedge fund manager who got tired of financing her, 3 businesses that lasted fewer than 8 months each, and a lifestyle that ran about $22,000 a month on someone else's dime, usually our father's. In June of the year before everything collapsed, my father gave Madeline a house, not a starter home, not a condo, a $60,000 property in Newport Beach, ocean view, travertine floors, infinity pool, the works. He bought it outright, in cash, no mortgage, transferred the deed as a gift. I found this out the same way I found out most things about Madeline's life, secondhand, weeks later, in the middle of another conversation. My mother mentioned it casually over the phone, the way you'd mention someone got a new haircut. Your father found a beautiful place for Madeline. She's gonna love the light. I remember sitting in my car in a parking garage for about 4 minutes, just breathing. I didn't say anything, because I had learned very early that saying anything about Madeline's gifts was not a road that led anywhere useful. My parents had a way of receiving any observation about the disparity as a character flaw in the observer. You're jealous. You're materialistic. You have so much, Claire. Why do you need more? I was the successful one. The implication was always that successful people didn't need anything. I had my own house. I'd bought it myself. A 4-bedroom in Irvine that I'd put a $200,000 down payment on, took out a 15-year mortgage for, and spent 2 years renovating corner by corner. It was mine, in every way that counted. I had not received a $960,000 cash gift. I had not received anything close to it, but I was the practical one, and practical ones don't complain. So I sat in my parking garage and breathed and said nothing. What I should have realized then, what I almost understood but didn't quite let myself believe, was that Madeline would not keep the house. Madeline never kept anything. By October, she was gone. Gone from Newport Beach, gone from the ocean view, gone from the infinity pool. She'd sold the house for $940,000, slightly under market, because she'd accepted a fast cash offer, which told me she'd needed the money quickly and hadn't shopped around. The sale closed in October, and by November she was living in a West Hollywood penthouse at $14,000 a month. By December, she was in Ibiza. I pieced this together not because anyone told me, but because I started paying attention in a way I hadn't before. Something about the speed of it, the way she'd liquidated a nearly $1 million asset within 4 months of receiving it, made me feel a specific, low-grade dread that I couldn't quite name. The DJ boyfriend she followed to Ibiza was named Marco, and he had approximately $118,000 in personal debt, which Madeline paid off. I know the number because she told my mother, and my mother told me. And when I repeated it back, she said he would have done it for her. They were in Europe for 6 weeks. By January, It was all gone. The $940,000, all of it, spent, transferred, bled out across 6 months of living at a velocity that would have been impressive if it weren't catastrophic. Madeline came home with 2 designer suitcases and no address, moved into my parents' guest house, and started telling people that money disappears when those around you keep taking from you. My father nodded along like she was delivering a TED Talk. I heard this and felt the dread sharpen into something more specific, because I had seen this pattern before, in my father, not just Madeline. His solution to her crises had always been resources. A car after the crash, a business loan after the first failed venture, a house when she had nowhere to go. The pattern was Madeline falls, Richard catches, reset, repeat. The problem was, this time the resource pool had taken a hit. The Newport Beach house had been a major asset. I didn't know my parents' full financial picture, but I knew my father had been talking about retirement. I knew my mother had mentioned in a different phone call that the real estate market was uncertain, and I knew my house was worth approximately $980,000. I started paying attention the way I pay attention to the other side in a deposition. Quiet, total, unhurried. They came on a Sunday in March. All 4 of them, my parents, Madeline, and the weight of what I now recognized as a family consensus, reached without my participation. I had made coffee. I was reading case files at my kitchen table when I heard the car doors. I watched them come up the walk on my exterior camera before I opened the door. And even then, even seeing all 4 of them together, unannounced, I told myself it might be nothing. Maybe they were nearby. Maybe it was a casual visit. I should have known. The Pierce family doesn't do casual. My mother used the soft voice immediately, the one that means this is not a conversation. This is an announcement being delivered gently. She talked about space, about family, about how much room I had in this house as a single person with no children. Madeline sat on my sofa and looked around with that slow, evaluating gaze, the same look she'd given the Newport Beach property before she sold it. Then my father delivered it straight. No apology, no wind-up. We've decided the house should stay in the family under Madeline's name. We'll work out what you're owed. The room went extremely still. I looked at him. I looked at my sister. I looked at my mother, who was holding her coffee cup in both hands and studying the floor. Get out, I said. My father's face went tight, the jaw clench I'd watched him deploy on contractors who came in over budget. Claire, we're not asking. I know you're not asking, I said. Get out of my house. Madeline uncrossed her legs. You're a lawyer. You can find another place. I'm a litigation attorney, I said. Choose your next words very carefully. My mother touched her pearls, a nervous habit so consistent it might as well have been a tell. My father looked at Madeline, a look I had seen 10,000 times, the private language of their alliance. She'll come around. They left. They were back in 43 minutes. My phone buzzed with the motion alert at 11:14 a.m., and I watched my father's car pull up to the curb. He and Madeline got out. A white van pulled up behind them. A man in a gray jacket got out of the van with a canvas bag, a locksmith. I sat very still for approximately 15 seconds. Then I made 2 phone calls. The first was to the Irvine Police Department non-emergency line. I described what was occurring. Attempted unauthorized entry into my property. Perpetrators currently on site. I am the sole legal owner and I am present, and requested immediate dispatch. The second call was to Secure Cloud Storage, the company that maintained 60 days of rolling backup for my Arlo system. I requested a time-stamped export of all footage from the last 2 hours to be preserved and flagged on my account. The woman on the phone had a mild professional voice. Confirmed, Ms. Pierce. Your footage is preserved and locked. I then went to my home office, opened the fireproof cabinet I kept behind my bookshelf, and retrieved a manila folder I had assembled that morning, before they'd even left the first time, because I want to be honest with you about something. I hadn't assembled that folder because I knew they were coming back with a locksmith. I'd assembled it because they'd shown up, unannounced, with a plan, and when someone with resources and motivation shows up with a plan, you prepare for the plan to continue. Inside the folder, a certified copy of my deed, pulled from the county recorder's office 6 weeks prior during a routine document audit, mortgage statements for the past 24 months, a title insurance confirmation, and one additional document, a formal criminal complaint, drafted by hand that morning in the 43 minutes between their departure and their return, alleging criminal trespass, attempted breaking and entering, and conspiracy to commit theft of real property. Signed, dated, ready to file. I walked to my front door. I opened it just as the locksmith was crouching down to examine the deadbolt. My father turned around. For half a second, something shifted in his face. He hadn't expected me at the door. He'd expected, I think, to complete the lock change and present it to me as a fait accompli, the Richard Pierce method of resolving disagreements. Claire, the police are on their way, I said. Whatever you are paying him, it is not enough. The locksmith stood up slowly. This is a family matter, my father said. You brought a locksmith to my house, I said. That stopped being a family matter and became a criminal matter approximately 10 minutes ago. 2 patrol cars arrived at 11:31 a.m. Officers Derek Huang and Priya Valentine. I noted their badge numbers when they stepped out, because I note things. Officer Huang had the kind of calm efficiency that suggested he'd done domestics and property disputes often enough to not be surprised by anything. Officer Valentine had her notepad out before she reached the porch. My father tried the reasonable voice, the contractor voice. He explained, with measured confidence, that there had been a family misunderstanding, and that the property in question had always been intended to remain within the family unit. Officer Huang asked him for documentation. My father said it was complicated. Do you have documentation showing ownership or legal interest in this property, sir? Silence. Sir? My father looked at Madeline. Madeline looked at her shoes. I handed Officer Huang my folder. He went through it with the methodical care of someone who has seen people try to bluff their way through property disputes before and learned to read paper instead of people. He looked at the deed. He looked at the mortgage statements. He passed the folder to Officer Valentine, who read the criminal complaint I had drafted and looked up at me over the top of it. You prepared this morning? She said. Yes. Before they returned? During the window between their first visit and their return. She looked at my father, then at Madeline, then back at the complaint. Ms. Pierce, she said, are you requesting we proceed with this filing? I had thought about this the whole morning, actually, while they were gone, while I was pulling the folder together. I had thought about whether I wanted to file a criminal complaint against my father, not whether I could, whether I wanted to. And I had decided, yes, not to punish him, not out of rage, but because the only language my father had ever truly understood was documentation. Yes, I said, please proceed. What happened next lasted about 40 minutes, and I'm going to be honest. It was one of the most surreal experiences of my life, and I am someone who once deposed a man who had forged 12 years of business records. My father was read his rights on my front lawn. Not arrested, not yet, but read his rights, which in a neighborhood like mine, where people take their dogs out on Sunday mornings and wash their cars in the driveway, has a certain social weight. My mother arrived during this part. She had followed in her own car, I assume expecting a different scene, perhaps me, tearful, signing something. Instead, she found her husband standing on the lawn with his hands at his sides while Officer Huang explained the nature of the complaint being filed. She stood at the gate. She didn't say anything. She just stood there in her Sunday clothes, one hand on the iron post, watching. Madeline had been crying since the officers arrived, the specific kind of crying she deployed for audiences, loud enough to register, controlled enough to be maintained. She kept saying family matter like it was an incantation. Nobody moved to comfort her. I noticed that. I noticed it specifically, and I have thought about it many times since. Nobody moved to comfort her. Not my mother. Not the officers, not even my father, who was generally her first responder in any emotional emergency. They were all, in their various ways, absorbing what had just happened. Officer Valentine pulled me aside. Ms. Pierce, I want to make sure you understand the scope of what you're initiating. This will go on your father's record as a complaint. It will likely result in charges. I understand. Is there any family resolution you'd prefer to pursue first? We can refer you to a civil mediator. He came to my house with a locksmith, I said. He came back 43 minutes after I asked him to leave. There is footage. There is a time-stamped cloud backup of every moment of it. I looked at her steadily. He is a man who builds things. He understands what foundations are. I am showing him what mine is made of. She looked at me for a moment. Okay, she said. The formal complaint was filed that afternoon. The charges, attempted breaking and entering, criminal trespass, conspiracy to commit theft of real property, were reviewed by the Orange County District Attorney's Office the following week. I met with Assistant DA Thomas Riley on a Thursday morning at 9 a.m. He was in his mid-50s, reading glasses perpetually pushed up his forehead, and he had the manner of a man who had stopped being impressed by anything about 15 years ago. He read the complaint. He reviewed the folder. He watched the security footage, all 47 minutes of it, from the initial Sunday visit through the return with the locksmith and the arrival of the patrol cars. He watched it without expression. Your father is Richard Pierce, he said. Pierce and Associates. Yes, he's built half the commercial property in this county. I'm aware. He looked at me over his glasses. You understand that's going to make this a story. I understand. He set the footage down. Here's what I need from you, Ms. Pierce. I need a timeline. A complete documented timeline of all communications, texts, voicemails, emails, between yourself and your father or sister regarding this property in the 12 months prior to the incident. I need your financial records showing the purchase and maintenance of the property. And I need an affidavit. I have all three, I said. In the car. He blinked. I'll get them, I said. My father hired Marcus Webb of Webb and Gallagher, who was expensive and very good. I was not surprised. I had, since filing the complaint, retained Eleanor Cho of Cho and Partners. No relation to me, no prior conflict, 12 years specializing in property and civil rights. Eleanor was 41, wore reading glasses on a chain, and had the very particular energy of someone who found incompetence genuinely offensive. She reviewed everything and said, "This is a strong case. Don't let sentiment make it weak." I told her I wasn't feeling particularly sentimental. She said, "Good, because your father's attorney is going to argue family intent, that there was a verbal agreement or understanding that this property was held for the family's benefit. We need to establish that no such agreement existed." "There was no agreement," I said. "We need paper," she said. "We need text messages, emails, any communication in which he either acknowledges your sole ownership or makes reference to any claim. Can you pull everything?" I could. I did. What I gave Eleanor Cho was 847 pages of documentation. Every text exchange with my father over 4 years, exported and annotated. Every email. 3 voicemails transcribed. I had kept everything, not out of suspicion, but but out of the same habit that made me back up my security footage to the cloud and keep a fireproof cabinet. I am a litigation attorney, and I treat my own life the way I treat a case file. Eleanor paged through it slowly. He never once mentioned your sister in connection with this property, she said. No. He never expressed any expectation of your help, financially or otherwise. No. He did text you 3 months before the incident that he was proud of you for building something real. She showed me the message. I had not thought about that text since I'd received it. Seeing it now had a particular quality. Proud of you for building something real, Claire. Yes, I said. He did. Eleanor removed her glasses and looked at me. Are you okay? I thought about it honestly. Not yet, I said, but I will be. The civil case and the criminal complaint ran parallel tracks over the following 4 months, and I will not walk you through every motion and counterclaim because honestly, some of it was quite boring and most of it was administrative. What was not boring was the deposition of my sister. Madeline was deposed by Eleanor Cho on a Friday in June. The deposition took 3 hours and 40 minutes. I was not present. Attorneys generally don't attend depositions of adverse witnesses directly. We let our lawyers handle it and then read the transcript. Eleanor gave me the transcript that evening with a yellow sticky note on the cover that said, "She did our work for us." Madeline, under oath, with a court reporter transcribing, stated the following: that the Newport Beach house had been a gift, unencumbered, given freely by her father, that she had sold it because it was her right as the owner to dispose of property, that she had used the proceeds as she saw fit, that she believed her father's intention in giving her the Newport Beach house was to give her a foundation, and that when that foundation failed to hold her, it was logical that a different foundation should be found. When Eleanor asked her which foundation she was referring to, Madeline said, "Claire's house. My parents always intended it to be held in trust for the family." Eleanor asked her to produce any documentation supporting this belief. Madeline said there was a family understanding. Eleanor asked her to produce any text, email, voicemail, or written communication in which any member of the Pierce family communicated this understanding to Claire Pierce directly. Madeline said, "It was just known. It was just known." I read that line 4 times, sat with it. In 31 years of watching my sister move through the world, absorbing resources, burning through them, resetting, starting over, I had never heard it articulated so plainly. There was a whole architecture of assumption built up around me, about me, concerning what I would do and absorb and accept, and none of it had ever been spoken aloud because it didn't need to be. It was just known. I was known. I was a known quantity. The practical one, the self-sufficient one, the one who didn't need anything, who would always land on her feet, who could find another place, as Madeline had said that Sunday, with remarkable casualness, because I was a lawyer. What they had not known was that I had been watching, filing, noting, time-stamping. The criminal complaint against my father was resolved in August, not with an arrest, but with a formal civil consent order brokered between Marcus Webb and Eleanor Cho. My father admitted in writing that he had engaged a locksmith to access a property he had no legal claim to. He agreed to a 3-year restraining order barring him or Madeline from approaching within 100 feet of my property. He agreed to pay my legal fees, $41,200 in full, and he agreed to a public record acknowledgement that the property at my address was my sole and exclusive property with no family encumbrance of any kind. The document was signed, notarized, filed with the county. Eleanor handed me a copy with the sticky note, "Done." The civil suit was dropped when Madeline's attorneys reviewed the deposition transcript and realized that their client had, under oath, established that she had sold the Newport Beach house of her own free will and acknowledged having no documentation of any family agreement regarding my property. There was nothing to sue for. There had never been anything to sue for. My father called me in September. The call came at 7:22 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was cooking dinner. Pasta, nothing special. And his name appeared on my screen and I stood there watching it ring. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message. It was 2 minutes and 11 seconds long. I played it once, standing at my stove, and I'll tell you what he said. Not because I want to be dramatic about it, but because it matters. He said he didn't recognize what he had done as the thing it was while he was doing it. He said he had looked at me. All his life, he said, he had looked at me and seen someone who didn't need protecting. And when Madeline needed help, he had moved toward the easiest solution he could identify, which was me, because in his mind, I would manage. I built things my whole life, he said. Properties, companies. I thought I knew what a foundation was. He paused. You showed me I was wrong about what I built. I listened to the message a second time. Then I turned off the stove and sat down at my kitchen table and allowed myself, for the first time since March, to feel something other than methodical. I cried for about 8 minutes. The practical, efficient kind. Then I washed my face and finished making dinner. I did not call him back that night, but I kept the voicemail. This is the part I want to be careful about because I don't want to tie it up too neatly. Real stories don't do that. My father and I have spoken twice since September. Not warmly, not coldly, carefully. The way you speak to someone when you're rebuilding something from materials that aren't quite what they used to be, but are still usable. I don't know yet what we're building. My mother has not called me directly. She sends texts sometimes, photos of things she thinks I'd like, a recipe she made. I respond. It's what we have right now, and I'm not sure it will ever be more than that. And that's a thing I have decided to accept rather than fix. Madeline is living in San Diego. My parents are not funding it. I don't know the details, and I have made a deliberate choice not to look into them. Whatever she is building there is her project, not mine. I hope she builds something real. I mean that without irony. My house still has the same locks I installed in 2022. I replaced the exterior cameras with a newer Arlo Ultra 2 system in October. The cloud storage is backed up to 60 days rolling. Eleanor Cho's card is still in my wallet. I am not someone who lives in fear, but I am someone who learned this year that the structures you build around yourself, legal, financial, documentary, are not paranoia. They are architecture. And the things you love, you protect. You put your name on the deed. You keep the receipts. You back up the footage. You don't wait for the locksmith to finish. There's a line from the deposition transcript I keep coming back to. Not Madeline's most revealing answer. Not the "it was just known" moment as much as that one cracked me open. It's something she said near the end after 3.5 hours when Eleanor was wrapping up and asked her one final question. In your view, what did your sister owe the family? Madeline thought about it. Genuinely thought for a few seconds. Then she said, more than she was giving. And I thought about that for a long time. More than I was giving. After everything I had built and earned and protected, the accounting in her head still had me in deficit. Still had me owing something. To a family that gave me the implicit gift of being the one who was fine, which freed them to worry about someone else. And I thought maybe that's what the house was always about. Not the square footage, not the deed or the mortgage or the cameras. It was about being seen, being the one who needed protecting, just once, being the one someone moved toward instead of past. But here is what I know now, and what I want you to take from this if you take anything. Nobody is coming to protect the practical one, the self-sufficient one, the one who will manage. You have to protect yourself. You have to know where the papers are. You have to timestamp the footage. You have to make the phone calls before the drill breaks the deadbolt, not after. And when your father stands on your lawn and his face finally collapses, when he sees you not as the practical one, not as the self-sufficient one, but as someone who has been watching and documenting and will not be managed. Let him see it fully. Don't soften it. He taught you how to build something real. The least you can do is let him see what you made. 3 months after the consent order was signed, I got a property tax assessment for the new market value of my house. It had appreciated by $47,000. I called Eleanor. She laughed. Of course it did, she said. Of course it did. If you made it this far, you know what to do. Hit like. This one costs something to tell.